It was supposed to be the best night of their lives. 5 teenage boys, one final game, one last victory under the lights. They left the locker room soaked in sweat and joy, cleats clapping on the pavement, helmets tucked under their arms. They laughed. They shouted. They never made it home. No accident. No crash. Just gone. 5 football players vanished after the championship match. No goodbye, no call, no trace. For 20 years, the town remembered them as missing. But then a mother, one of the only ones who never gave up, found something in a sealed envelope under her son's bed. And what she found rewrote everything. Welcome to Uncommon Stories. If this story stays with you, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from and when the truth found you. Now let's begin. September 12, 2003. The small town of Red Ridge, West Virginia, was alive. The air was thick with sweat, hot dogs, and floodlights. The Red Ridge Wolves were facing off against the Ashford Titans for the regional championship, their first shot at the title in 16 years. Bleachers groaned under the weight of a packed crowd. Mothers gripped foam fingers. Dads clutched thermoses of cheap coffee. The marching band played off-key but loud. And on the field, 5 players stood out. Jason Romer, 18, the star quarterback. Devin D. Taylor, 17, the fastest wide receiver in 3 counties. Brian Cruz, 18, linebacker, team captain, and future Army recruit. Eli Shapiro, 17, the quiet kicker who never missed a field goal. And Malik Grayson, 18, the left tackle, built like a wall but gentle as a poem. They were more than teammates. They were brothers. And that night, under those Friday lights, they won. Final score, 28-24. Jason threw the winning pass with 9 seconds left. D made the catch. The stands erupted. People cried. Fireworks exploded. The coach hoisted the trophy above his head while confetti rained from the bandstand. Everyone said it felt like a movie. No one knew it was the last time they'd ever be seen. The team huddled outside the locker room around 10:42 p.m. Phone videos later showed them clapping hands, pulling on hoodies, and heading toward Brian's O-van. It was a rusted 1992 Dodge Caravan, burgundy, with one sliding door that stuck in the cold. Witnesses say they were planning to grab food at a gas station up the road. That was the plan. But they never got there. At 11:30 p.m., Brian's mom called his phone. No answer. By midnight, Dee's sister called the sheriff. By 1 a.m., the whole town was awake. Search parties formed by sunrise. Dozens of locals combed the woods, drainage ditches, back roads. Police called it a non-suspicious disappearance at first. They said it was probably celebration gone wrong. Maybe a night out that spiraled into something else. But parents weren't buying it. There was no van, no crash site, no phone pings, no credit card use. It was like the road swallowed them whole. Jason's mom, Martha Romer, was the loudest voice in those early days. She handed out flyers, camped outside the sheriff's office, put up a billboard at her own expense. Where are our boys? The town felt her grief in every passing car. She wore Jason's jersey every day for a year. After 6 months, the case went cold. No new evidence, no witnesses, just 5 missing boys. An empty seat in every classroom. A year later, the high school retired their numbers, painted their names on the gym wall, held a candlelight vigil that turned into a tradition. Same day, every year. 5 candles, 5 helmets, 5 empty chairs. But for the families, there was never peace. And for Martha Romer, there was never rest. Fast forward to May 2023. 20 years after that night, Martha was finally moving out of her house. She hadn't touched Jason's room in 2 decades, not since he disappeared. Same bed sheets, same alarm clock, same football cleats by the door. She packed slowly, each item folded with care, like folding a memory you're not ready to bury. And when she opened his nightstand drawer, something shifted. Behind the bottom panel, wedged tight against the wood, was an envelope. No stamp, just her name written in black ink. Mom. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, a letter. Not long, just a few sentences. written in her son's handwriting. If anything happens tonight, don't believe it was an accident. If I vanish, it's because of what we found. Please don't stop looking. It was signed Jason. No date, no details. But it changed everything. She rushed the letter to police. They ran a handwriting match. It was real. Dated analysis confirmed it was at least 18 years old. The envelope had never been opened. She never knew it was there. And now they had a new question. What did they find? Investigators reopened the case. Quietly. They didn't want press. Didn't want panic. Didn't want false hope. But what they found next would finally break the silence. A gas station worker, retired now, came forward. He remembered something. That night, around 11:10 p.m., 5 boys came in, bought energy drinks, 2 bags of chips, 1 box of bandages, looked shaken, whispered. One of them, he couldn't say which, asked if they had a payphone. The man pointed to the booth outside. He watched them exit, watched them gather around the phone, and then watched them drive off. But not toward town. They turned the other way, toward the old quarry, the one that had been closed since 1998. Why go there? Why so late? Why the letter? And what were they trying to call in? The answers, buried for 20 years, were about to rise, because what the boys found that night was never supposed to be seen. The old quarry sat at the edge of Red Ridge, quiet, fenced off, long since forgotten. It hadn't operated since 1998, after a worker fell from the upper ridge, and the company shut it down for good. Over the years, vines grew thick along the chain-link fence. The gravel road to the gate washed out every spring. Locals said it was haunted, but more out of habit than belief. No one had reason to go near it. No one, except 5 boys on the night they vanished. Martha Romer's discovery, the letter from Jason, sent new shockwaves through the case. It wasn't just a final note. It was a warning. If I vanish, it's because of what we found. But what had they found? Why had they gone to the quarry? Why did Jason hide the note instead of handing it to police? Unless they didn't trust the police. Retired Deputy Charles Whitmore had worked the case in 2003. He was one of the first responders when the boys were reported missing. After seeing the letter, he reached out to investigators and quietly asked to review old radio logs. He remembered something from that night. Something small. A report never followed up. At 11:28 p.m., 12 minutes after the boys were last seen at the gas station, a 911 call came through from a payphone near the quarry road. No voice, just static and a sound like someone breathing through a nose. Then silence. The call lasted 18 seconds before disconnecting. It was logged, but back then, without caller ID or GPS, and with no clear speech, it was dismissed. Now, it might have been the last attempt they made to call for help. Investigators re-examined satellite imagery from that night. One thermal frame, grainy and faded, showed 5 heat signatures near the quarry's eastern ledge at 11:36 p.m. Then, at 11:42, the signatures disappeared. No vehicle, no exit trail, no sign of movement. Just gone. The quarry had been searched in 2003, but only from the surface. Now, 20 years later, cadaver dogs were brought in. Drones scanned the area with new LiDAR systems. And for the first time, something was found. Near the northwest ridge, under 6 feet of brush and debris, they uncovered an old wooden hatch. Half-rotted, nailed shut, no visible entrance from a road. Hidden by nature and time. The team pried it open. A staircase led down into blackness. The air inside was wrong. Cold but stale. Dry but metallic. They descended carefully. Flashlights swept over dirt walls, fractured beams. And then, 20 feet down, they found a room. It was rectangular, roughly 10 by 12 feet. The walls were concrete, hastily poured. No furniture, no bedding, just 5 folding chairs bolted to the floor. And in the center of the room, a single video camera, molded over, dead, but real. The camera was bagged and sent for recovery. The chairs, numbered, 1 to 5. each with heavy scuff marks near the legs, like someone had kicked them, and behind the chairs, scratched into the wall with what looked like a key or nail. You brought this on yourselves. No fingerprints. No print on the hatch, the camera, or the floor. Whoever made the room cleaned it, but not perfectly. In the corner, wedged between two cinder blocks, was a strip of fabric, part of a jersey, red and black, red Ridge Wolves colors, number barely visible. But when they showed it to Martha, she didn't even need to look close. That's Jason's. The case was no longer just a disappearance. It was a crime scene. The town responded with grief, anger, shock. But for many, there was something else. A question they'd been too scared to ask. Why would someone do this to them? Retired Coach Ray Fenley, now 72, was interviewed for the reopened case. He looked tired, weathered. When shown photos of the underground room, he looked down for a long time. Then he said, there was something that season, something those boys were chasing. He paused. They told me they found something in the woods one night. Said it had to do with someone who used to work for the quarry. They asked if I remembered a name. Giles. Investigators blinked. What name? David Giles. He worked security for the quarry before it closed. Coach Fenley remembered him because of a rumor that in the 90s, Giles was accused of following boys home after practice. Nothing ever stuck. No one pressed charges. But after the quarry closed, Giles left town, or so they thought. A search of local utility records from 2003 revealed something chilling. A cabin registered under a fake name, Daniel Greer, just 2 miles from the quarry. The billing address? A P.O. box traced to an alias formerly used by David Giles. When police searched the cabin, it was empty, abandoned for years. But in the basement, they found a box of VHS tapes, each labeled with a date and initials. September 2nd, 03 BC. September 5th, 03 DT. September 6th, 03 JR. 3 of the missing boys' initials. The tapes were degraded. 2 wouldn't play, but 1 did. And what it showed was worse than anyone expected. The footage was black and white, low quality, no audio. It showed a dim room, cement walls, a single chair, and in it a boy, tied, struggling, face barely visible, but confirmed as detailer. The video lasted 13 minutes. At the 11-minute mark, a shadow passed across the screen. A man's silhouette, tall, unshaven, motionless. Then the screen cut to black. The tape was time-stamped September 5th, 2003, 3 days after the disappearance, meaning the boys were alive for at least that long. That changed everything. Now, it wasn't just about finding the van, or the bodies, or the killer. It was about uncovering why those boys ended up in that bunker. And what they found that night, that was never meant to be found. Because if Jason's letter was true, it wasn't an accident. More questions were coming, and so were the answers, buried in old maps, hidden in school reports, tied to a man who never left town, and to a mother who never stopped looking. They were alive, at least for a while. That truth hit the town like a second tragedy. For 20 years, the families of the 5 boys had lived with the unknown, not knowing if they were dead, not knowing if they had run, not knowing if some stranger had taken them. But now they knew they hadn't vanished instantly. They had been held, watched, and worse, one of them had been filmed. The video of Dee Taylor was never released to public, but investigators confirmed what it showed. A basement, a folding chair, chains, and fear. You could feel it through the screen. The tension in Dee's arms, the way he looked off camera, the way he flinched, not from sound, but from silence. And in the corner of the frame, for just 2 seconds, a calendar. September 2003. The date circled, the 10th, meaning the tape was filmed 8 days after the boys disappeared. This was never about a car crash, never about a detour. It was a planned abduction, and someone had been watching them. The suspect, David Giles, hadn't been seen in Red Ridge since the early 2000s. No arrest records, no official employment, But several locals remembered him. They described him as quiet, strange, and overly interested in teenage boys. One shopkeeper said he used to come in and buy snacks on game nights, always by himself, always with a small notebook. When asked what was in it, she said, just numbers and dates. The basement bunker had fingerprints on the inside, too smudged to trace. But the tapes? One of them contained a partial palm print, and it matched a set taken from a juvenile record belonging to David Giles in 1979. The search for Giles intensified. Interpol was contacted, aliases flagged, passports tracked, but he was a ghost. Until a break came, not from a law office or federal agency, but from a man named Carl Danvers, a retired cemetery caretaker in Georgia. He'd been watching a documentary rerun on the Red Ridge case, and something in the footage made his blood freeze. A still photo of David Giles, age progressed. He looked just like a man who used to visit a specific grave. Same coat, same glasses, same limp, always left at sunset. Always placed the same thing on the headstone, a small plastic football. The grave belonged to a teenage boy who died in a drowning accident in 1995. Name, Nathan Ferris. No relation to the 5 boys. No obvious connection. But when they dug deeper, they found something strange. Nathan Ferris had lived 2 towns over from Giles in the early 90s, and according to police reports from that time, he'd gone missing for 4 days before his body was found. The death was ruled an accident, but now investigators weren't so sure. A dive into Giles's past revealed a disturbing pattern. 1995, Nathan vanishes, found dead days later. 1998, Corey closes under safety concerns. 1999 to 2002, 3 separate reports of teens going missing for a day, then returning silent. No charges. 2003, the 5 boys vanish. No return. And after that, nothing. No victims. No sightings. No trace. Until now. Meanwhile, back in Red Ridge, the recovery team continued searching the old quarry property. They found a second hatch. This one collapsed inward by a fallen tree. Inside, a rusted cot, molded food containers, a bucket, but no bodies, no DNA, just waiting. And then the letter. Brian Cruz's mom, Elena, had also kept his room untouched. After hearing about Martha Romer's discovery, she went through Brian's things with fresh eyes, and she found something taped under his dresser drawer, a page from a journal, folded tight, faded from years of dust. It read, "We shouldn't have followed him, but we thought it was a joke. Jason said we needed to see. I think we saw too much. If we don't come back, tell Coach it wasn't his fault." That was all. No date, no name, but it changed everything again. They had followed someone to the quarry, and they saw something they were never supposed to see. Coach Fenley was brought back in for questioning. He confirmed that a week before the championship game, the boys had been acting strange, skipping practice, whispering more. Jason even asked him once if there were any old buildings near the quarry. Fenley said, "Why do you ask?" Jason just replied, "We think someone's been out there, someone watching us." No one thought to act on it. They were boys, teenagers, curious, loud, invincible, until they weren't. With the tapes, the letters, and the bunker, the case was finally declared a serial abduction and homicide. A reward was issued. The FBI confirmed David Giles as the primary suspect. But still, he was missing. That is, until an anonymous package arrived at the sheriff's office. No return address. Inside, a map, hand-drawn, with a red line traced from Red Ridge to a town in Oklahoma. At the bottom, in shaking handwriting, "The next one, stop him." The letter was signed, J.R. Jason Romer. But how? Was it real? A hoax? Was Jason alive? Or was this planted by someone who knew too much? Someone who was still playing a game, even 20 years later. The package was real. The map was hand-drawn, aged, folded neatly. And the ink on the signature? Forensic lab confirmed, not fresh. It had been written years ago. The signature, JR, matched Jason Romer's handwriting. If the test was accurate, he had been alive, at least for a time, after vanishing. The route on the map ran west. Red Ridge to Denton, Oklahoma, straight across 4 state lines. No major highways, just back roads and towns most people pass without remembering. And circled in red near the bottom of the page, a place called Bluff Creek Storage. Authorities sent a small team to investigate. Bluff Creek Storage was old, one of those 24-hour, keypad entry types. No cameras, no night staff, just rows of metal doors and concrete floors. The unit circled on the map, B7, had been rented under the name Henry Lowell. That name meant nothing until they cross-checked it with old Red Ridge employment records. Henry Lowell had once applied for a custodial job at the high school in 2002, used a fake number, but the handwriting on the application matched David Giles. The storage unit was open just after sunrise. Inside was no car, no boxes, no furniture, just a chair and a duffel bag. Inside the bag, a pair of rusted handcuffs, a football jersey, torn, faded, number 12, a leather notebook, and 5 Polaroid photos rubber banded together. Each photo showed a different boy. One of them was Jason. One was D. The other 3, unknown, faces bruised, eyes closed, each sitting in a cement room. And behind them, the same wall marking, "Be quiet or the lights don't come back." The photos were time-stamped, October 2003, a full month after they vanished. The notebook was worse. Inside, pages and pages of lined writing, thoughts, instructions, observations, as if someone had been keeping notes on behavior, like a scientist with lab rats. Quotes from the entries. Subject 2 responds to darkness with pacing. Subject 4 is prone to prayer. Note emotional patterns. Subject 1 hasn't spoken in 48 hours. This is promising. Reward silence. Punish memory. None of them remember what they saw, but one of them lies. The handwriting didn't match Jason's. It matched Giles, but the final entry in the notebook was in a different style. Sharper. Rushed. Just 5 words. He's gone. I stayed hidden. Signed again, JR. The implications were staggering. Jason may have escaped, or at least avoided whatever happened to the others. But if that's true, why didn't he come home? Why didn't he tell anyone? Where was he now? Investigators kept digging. They tracked Henry Lowell. S-trail across motel records, gas stations, and small-town receipts, going as far back as 2004. And then one strange hit. A motel in Arizona, dated 2007. The guest signed and under the name J.R. Carver. Paid in cash. Stayed 2 nights. Left behind nothing, except for a newspaper clipping tucked between the motel Bible pages. The article? A story about the Red Ridge 5. Clipped perfectly. Folded twice. No markings. No blood. But someone had kept it close. Back in Red Ridge, the town was unraveling. More memories surfaced. More theories emerged. One girl, now in her 30s, said she remembered seeing Jason at a diner 5 months after the disappearance. He looked thinner, tired, sat near the window, and didn't speak. She told her parents, but they dismissed it as grief. No one believed a boy could come back and say nothing. But now, that seemed exactly like something Jason would have done, because silence had become survival. A breakthrough came in the form of a former quarry worker, Gerald Milner, 64. He'd worked the site before it closed and remembered Giles. Said he was the kind of guy who measured time by how long a person could last without blinking. Gerald remembered that once Giles had asked, "You think silence can be taught?" Gerald thought he was joking. Now he wasn't so sure. The FBI profilers developed a chilling picture. Giles had likely been abducting and isolating young boys for behavioral experiments. He believed silence was a form of truth, that memory dissolved with noise, but sharpened in stillness. He wanted to erase his victims' sense of time, sound, and self, to break them without touching them. The bunkers, the videos, the journals, all part of the system. He wasn't just taking people. He was testing them. The map Jason left, mailed 2 decades later, wasn't just a clue. It was a warning. And the fact that it led to a fresh trail meant one thing. Jason was still alive, or had been long enough to fight back. The trail led investigators to a small trailer outside Roswell, New Mexico. The man inside used the name John Ray. Had no ID, no online presence. But when they asked for a handwriting sample, he refused. When they showed him the photo of Jason Romer, the boy who disappeared in 2003, he went pale. Didn't deny it, didn't confirm it. Just said, "I left that place." But some places don't leave you. They couldn't arrest him. No proof, no warrant. But they collected his fingerprints and waited. And when the results came back, they matched Jason Romer. He had survived, escaped, lived under a false name for nearly 2 decades. But the scars on his body and on his voice told a different story. He hadn't just vanished. He'd been erased one day at a time. Jason wouldn't say what happened to the others, wouldn't confirm who survived, but he gave one statement to federal agents before disappearing again. "We saw something in the quarry that night. We thought it was buried, but it wasn't buried deep enough." The investigation took on new urgency. If Jason had lived and kept running, there was still hope that others had too. And somewhere, maybe even now, someone else was waiting to be found. Jason disappeared again. Not into thin air, not this time. But after the DNA match, the fingerprint hit, the quiet, near-whispered confirmation. He simply walked away, left the trailer, the town, the cameras. No statement to the press. No apology. No tears. Only one thing left behind. A note scribbled on the motel notepad. "I didn't run from you. I ran from him." And just like that, the last living thread unraveled again. The only boy to return, gone once more. But his voice, though brief, had changed the case forever. Now there was proof of survival, of silence, of something too terrible to name. And somewhere in that in-between, not life, not death, just memory, the other 4 boys still lingered. Martha Romer, Jason's mother, was told quietly, privately, no cameras. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "I knew he wasn't dead. I knew I'd feel it if he was gone." And when asked if she thought he'd come back again, she just shook her head. "Would you?" The FBI began building a profile of Giles that extended beyond the Red Ridge 5. Evidence tied him to the 1995 disappearance of Nathan Ferris, the 1998 quarry closure, 2 separate missing teen cases in Oklahoma and Missouri, and now a string of non-lethal isolations, boys who were abducted, kept for days, then released. Changed. One of those boys, now a grown man, came forward anonymously. He said he was taken in 1999 from a rest stop on I-70. Said he was kept underground for 4 days, given no food, only water. He said the man who took him wore gloves, spoke softly. "He never hurt me, but he watched. He watched like I was a candle, waiting to go out." He said the only time a man got angry was when he cried. The man's description matched Giles exactly. Same voice, same build, same smell, pine and bleach. But what he remembered most was the phrase the man repeated. "The loud ones die faster." Back in Red Ridge, the quarry was sealed by federal order. Too much pain, too many ghosts, too many secrets that refused to stay buried. But one final sweep of the area was authorized before close of good, and that's when they found it, under a slab of concrete, near the outer perimeter, a hollow space. Inside, a box. Inside the box, a camcorder. Inside the camcorder, a tape, no label, just dust. The footage started with static, then color, a dark room, bare bulb, 5 chairs. The boys, Jason, Dee, Brian, Eli, Malik, all sitting, not tied, just waiting. Then a voice, not seen but clear. "You remember what I said. 5 days, 5 rules. And when it's over, you leave. But only if you're quiet. Jason turned to camera. Mouth opened, closed, then looked down. The footage ran for 12 minutes. Mostly stillness, breathing, and then screaming. It was Brian. He stood, shouted, something about his sister, about not playing games. He kicked over the chair. Then static. The screen cut to black. When it came back on, only 4 boys remained. No sign of struggle. No blood. Just one less chair. One less life. One more secret. The footage shook Martha when she saw it. Shook the parents. The town. But not Jason, because he'd already lived it once. He didn't need to watch it again. The investigation shifted focus, not just on what Giles did, but why. Why athletes? Why boys? Why football? And slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Giles had tried out for Red Ridge High's football team in 1982, was cut after 2 weeks. Coaches said he was odd, detached, uncoachable. Rumors spread he'd stalked a teammate. Whispers about a locker room incident. He disappeared from the school a month later. Transferred out. Vanished from yearbooks. But he never forgot. And 20 years later, he returned. Built his bunker. Stalked his players. And waited until the perfect moment. A big win. A loud night. A town too busy cheering to notice who slipped away. This wasn't just murder. This was revenge, cold, methodical, and staged like a ritual. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unlikely place. A nurse in Albuquerque. She worked at a hospice center. One of her patients, frail, anonymous, under a false name, had a seizure and passed without a word. But when she cleaned his room, she found a book under the mattress. Inside the book, an envelope. Inside the envelope, 5 teeth, each in its own tiny bag, labeled with initials, DT, BC, yes, MG, GR, all 5 boys. Dental records matched 4. Jason's was an extracted molar, probably taken before his escape. But the others, they were real, and they were gone. Only Jason had made it out. Only Jason knew the full story. And only Jason, wherever he was now, carried that weight. When asked if the case was closed, the FBI gave a technical answer. There is no further active pursuit. But in Red Ridge, it's never really closed. The gym still hangs their jerseys. The candles still burn every September. The moms still gather in silence. And Jason? He writes letters now. To no one in particular. He sends them to the FBI once a year. No return address. Just one sentence. Each time. I didn't forget them. Don't you forget me. Some stories never really end. They just fall quiet. Like stadium lights dimming after a game that no one won. Like footsteps fading from a hallway that no one built. The town of Red Ridge still wakes every September with a hollow in its chest. The day is marked, not on calendars, but in the way people speak softer, drive slower, look longer at empty spaces. The 5 boys, Jason, Dee, Brian, Eli, and Malik, are no longer just missing. They are folded into the soil, written into the grain of the bleachers, etched into the locker room door with quiet hands. No one knows where Jason is now, but once a year, like clockwork, he sends a letter. No return address, no punctuation, just one page. And it always ends the same. If silence was how he disappeared, then let their names be noise. He is the only survivor, the only witness, the only one who saw what Giles became when no one was watching. David Giles was never found. The hospice patient, the teeth, the bunker, all point to him. But no photo, no body, no final word. It's like he walked backward into the shadows and became part of the dark. And maybe that's the only place he ever truly lived. The Red Ridge High football field is still there, painted fresh every fall. But no one wears jerseys numbered 1 through 5. They've been retired, not because they were legends, but because they were lost. In 2024, a memorial was built. Simple. Stone. It stands near the old quarry entrance. 5 statues, not of football players, of boys, sitting, waiting, each one facing a different direction, each one holding something different: a football, a cleat, a notebook, a flashlight, and an envelope. No names, just one phrase carved beneath them. We didn't vanish. We were taken. The monument was funded by private donations, the largest of which came anonymously. The receipt bore one set of initials, Jr. A documentary aired later that year. It traced the timeline, the trauma, the truth, interviewed survivors, officers, teachers, but not Jason. He refused. Instead, he sent a voice recording, 1 minute long. No introduction, no goodbye, just, "We were boys, loud, dumb, proud. We thought fear was weakness. We thought nothing could break us. And then one night, we learned that silence isn't empty. It's full of things that watch you." After the documentary aired, letters poured in from other towns, other families, other disappearances that never made the news. One woman wrote, "My brother vanished after football practice in 2001. The only thing they found was a chair bolted to the floor." Another said, "My son drew a map like the one Jason left, but we burned it. We were afraid of what it meant." And another, "There's a house in our neighborhood with no mailbox, but every week someone leaves a candle at the door." The FBI opened a silent file. No public announcement, no press release, just one more case number in a folder marked, "Still watching." The final chapter of this story doesn't end with closure. It ends with continuation, because trauma echoes, and silence repeats itself in strange places. Martha Romer lives alone now. Her house is smaller, quieter, but Jason's room still exists, just not in the way it did. She boxed up most of his things, left the bed untouched. Sometimes she walks in and just sits. No music, no photos, just the echo of a boy who said goodbye without knowing he'd said it. She keeps one thing with her, at all times. The note, the one he wrote before the game. The one that said, "If I vanish, it's because of what we found." She doesn't read it anymore. She just holds it, because sometimes holding something is the only proof that it was ever real. She's asked often by journalists and strangers, if you could say one thing to him now, what would it be? She always gives the same answer. You don't have to come home. Just stay alive. Some nights, when the wind is right, she swears she hears his voice on the breeze. A laugh that only a mother could know. And she smiles, not because it's over, but because he made it out. He didn't run to survive. He ran to remember. And now, his story helps others do the same. In a storage locker in Kansas, an envelope was found in 2025. Inside, a key, a photo, and a note. He built more than one room, but I locked this one myself. It ends here. No fingerprints, no proof, but the handwriting? Jason's. It's believed that Giles had built at least 7 bunkers. 6 have now been found. The last? It's sealed, buried, and the key is missing. Maybe it's better that way. Maybe we don't need to open every door. Maybe the loudest message is the one left unspoken. But still, the question lingers. What did they see that night? What truth was buried that couldn't stay hidden? And if they were taken because of what they found, then maybe we should all be asking, what's still out there? In Red Ridge, the floodlights still come on every Friday night. The band still plays. The crowd still cheers. But there's always a moment of silence before the kickoff. Always a pause. And if you stand still enough, you can almost hear 5 boys walking off the field one last time. Together, not vanished, not forgotten, just gone.